Hi, it's Amrita here from BizAsia, and having spoken to the lovely Mirza, I'm now speaking to her other half, part of Born Free Entertainment once again, who are presenting the movie Bobby Jasoos on the 4th of July. Hi, Sahil.
Hi Amrita, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I know you must have a busy schedule there.
No, not at all. It's entirely our pleasure, and I say that on behalf of the entire team behind Bobby Jasoos. Things are going really well. We're in final stages of delivery on the film, and we're happy to be now speaking about it so that we can hopefully entice everyone into wanting to go buy that ticket and watch the film and have a great time.
Lovely. I mean, you've just explained that it's going so well, but how do you feel so close to the release?
Well, there's a certain sense of preparedness. We feel that we're ready and everything has pretty much stayed true to the desired timelines. So we're actually feeling quite calm. But like they always say, there's always that lull before the storm. And as we approach closer and closer to the 4th of July, I think all the butterflies are going to start dancing pretty quickly. So yeah, it's all part of the entire process, I suppose.
Of course. Now this is obviously your second presentation after Love Breakup
Yes,
Zindagi, 2011.
that's correct.
Is there anything that you kind of learnt in the process of making Love Breakup Zindagi that you're bringing to Bobby Jasoos as a producer?
Oh, absolutely. I think you learn with every film. We learned many lessons with Love Breakups in the Give. We've learned many more with Bobby Jasoos, and I think that'll just go on and on. As times change, you're in such a people-intensive business, and producing eventually involves a lot of handling and then making sure that everyone is seeing the same film that you're setting out to make, because at the end of the day, you are dependent on their effort to create all of the things that you've thought up. So many things to learn, but I think as a production house, we were even more streamlined this time around, which I'm happy about. I think we managed to accumulate the right kind of experience to come on board and help us execute the vision that we had for the film. So yeah, I think being a little more streamlined would be the first and most important lesson. This was a larger production in terms of the fact that we weren't shooting in Bombay, we were shooting in Hyderabad for about 52 days. So logistically, then, you're away from what you call home base, so to speak. So logistically, you have to be better prepared again. And yeah, I think we did a pretty decent job with it. So as a producer, I'm quite happy.
Okay, so would you say it's fulfilled your expectations?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, there are two aspects to any film. One is the process of making it, and then it's the journey that the film finds once it releases and is handed over to the audience. I think it's very important as producers to each time around thoroughly enjoy the process, because that you can still control and influence. What the audience feels for a film eventually and how much love they want to shower upon it is often then beyond your control. So we've thoroughly enjoyed the first leg of it. We're going to absolutely soak up the fun in presenting it to a worldwide audience. And then, every film has its own journey, its own life, and we'll keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best.
Well, I wish you all the best with the film. It does look phenomenal from the promos.
Thank you.
Just to say,
Thank you.
you've brought in a sort of a debutante director.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say? What would you say he's brought? Would you say he's brought like a fresher vision to perhaps a more experienced person?
I think, look, when we set this company, one thing was pretty certain, that we were going to try our best to make it a bit of a breeding ground for as much new talent as possible. At some stage, we've all benefited from that mentorship in our own respective careers. We've been lucky to have people who've guided us and shown us the way and eventually given us opportunities to, make the most of. So Born Free tries to do that. We did a lot of that at a casting level in Love Breakups Zindagi. We have a debutant director this time around in Bobby Jasoos. And I think that what that really does is, yes, it does bring a sense of refreshed energy, a certain amount of enthusiasm and commitment on all counts. And with regard versus an experienced director, look, it's rarely a comparison that I would choose to make, simply because they both definitely have their own set of strengths. Now, as a producer, my job is to try and as a producer, as a production house, our job is essentially to navigate that energy in the right direction. And in that, like you asked, tying this into your previous question, given the lessons that you learn with each film, you usually find yourself better prepared. So eventually it's a team effort. You rub off on each other, and where experience needs to back enthusiasm and vice versa will happen, and hopefully the cocktail is fun. And in our case, it was.
Brilliant. It sounds exciting. I know I spoke to your protagonist, should I say, Vidya Balan, only a couple of weeks
Mm-hmm.
ago, and she said that she was particularly taken by Samar Sheikh's kind of vision of Hyderabad, if you like.
Right,
So it's really
right,
nice
right.
to know that you don't, you know, you kind of see it as a product in itself, as opposed to if it was an experienced person, it would be like this. Um, now,
Right, no, of course.
you recently
Good.
got engaged, so
Yeah.
I've got to say congratulations to you. You recently
Thank
got
you
engaged to
very
your
much.
partner, Dia Mirza, who I actually just spoke to. What is it like working with your to-be life partner?
It's actually, it's you. For starters, I guess you, in principle, have to have a few things in place. One is a good friendship between each of you, which we do, touch wood, have. You have to have a principal sense of respect for each other's skill set, which also touch wood we tend to have. The third most important piece is you have to demarcate a little clearly. I mean, film is a very emotional business, so sometimes emotions will overlap, opinions will overlap, but then you got to demarcate and say that, look, for for practical purposes, one of us is going to take the lead in certain areas of filmmaking when we're working as producers together. I
Mm,
independently write and direct also, so I mean, those are slightly more independent spaces.
okay.
But when we're producing a film together, there are certain strengths that you enjoy and there's some that I do, and we distribute those as best as possible. Let me
Mm-hmm.
add that that distribution isn't between Dia and me. We have a pretty close-knit production team, and we all share, the responsibilities of work fairly equally. Now, beyond that, which is the really fun part, yes, there are bound to be loads of disagreements, which we have all the time. We have lots of arguments. We squabble a lot. But I think the trick is to leave it at work. We do our best not to bring it into the home space, and once you leave office, you've left it there, you can pick it up the next morning. But, I always say a healthy debate is fantastic as long as you can reach what would then seem to be the most productive decision you could have taken with regard to any matter.
Mm,
And, we're fairly open-minded and, there's no real scope for one-upmanship because the eventual goal is shared by so many people. It's not just Dia and myself that, that kind of gets ingrained pretty quickly.
okay.
So it kind of works out well. I think we've been lucky with the balance we found so far. We'll try and regain it as we move further with more ambitious films and projects and all of that. And experience is a wonderful thing, Amrita. When you get time within setups together, you find the balancing act becomes easier.
I hope the balancing act continues in your future
Thank you.
productions. Um,
Thank
Now,
you.
just a note about how did you get into producing films together? Should I say? How did that come about?
You know, I when we had Love Breakup Zindagi as a subject and as a script and all of that, our whole endeavor at that time was to try and put it out there as best as possible in terms of our interpretation of the subject. There's a certain way, a certain aesthetic that we wanted to attach to the film, in addition to which there was we felt very attached to the story, so there was just like a certain set of people that we wanted to bring on board, and the creative mounting became paramount in terms of importance and relevance. And, I think when as individuals you gravitate towards the concept of ownership and taking responsibility, you'll find yourself becoming a producer very quickly. You have to love each part of what goes into filmmaking enough and not just be focused on one particular aspect. And I think we principally connected on that as an approach towards making film, which is why at Born Free, it's not about whether I will direct every single film or whether Dia will act in every film that we make. It's really about, look, this is a nice story, we want to tell it, and if we put a good team together, I think we'll be able to do a reasonable job with it. That's
Hmm.
really how we go about everything. That's our principal approach. And that's why we're producing, because I think you got to love stories and you got to love the process of getting them out there enough. So deep down, it's very selfish. We're very greedy. We just want to tell more stories. And you can't be
Oh,
telling all the stories yourself.
no, of course. But no, I think some greediness is probably good in the business. Um, okay, so I mean, it's fabulous that you're working together. But in terms of future productions, even in terms of
Mm-hmm.
Bobby Jasoos, you must see something on paper when the project begins, when it's conceived.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say, in terms of Bobby Jasoos, that it's actually turned out the way you wanted it to?
Yes, I would confidently say that for the most part it has. When you make a film, you will realize, and that's a good question because a film must be viewed in its complete entirety. Now that the film is complete, we believe that you will walk out with one principal emotion which we wanted you to feel when we set out to make this film. I do believe that the audiences will. Having said that, if you were to break it down and go page by page and scene by scene, you will find that, in some scenes it surprised you that, I always thought the scene would, probably be a bit like this, and oh my God, this is like way better because the actor has surprised you, the camera has surprised you, the background sound during post has surprised you. And similarly, let me be really honest and add that sometimes you feel that really, I really thought this scene would be a little better than it, but that's all right. So eventually you have to assess it in its entirety because it's human process, like I keep saying, and sometimes you can have a good day and sometimes you can have a not so good. But when it all comes together, when every single department puts their best foot forward, you will walk out with the principal emotion that you wanted the audience to feel when you set out to make the film.
Mm.
And so I think that we're there with this one on that count. And now it's really a function of how much you will, like I said, the audiences will choose to love the various moving parts of the film, and we'll find out pretty soon, won't we?
We will indeed, just a few weeks away.
Yeah.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm from London. I'm part of the London spectrum of
Yes.
audience. I'm
Yeah.
often hearing that the Indian audience is very different to an international audience and probably split from London to another country. How would
Right.
you think that Bobby Jasoos fits in with the international or even London audience specifically?
In principle, I don't agree with the statement to begin with, even if it is a notion or a rumor or a theory that's floating around in different columns or
Hmm.
portals and just opinion makers, so to speak. At the end of the day, what's the movie? It's a story. Now, it's either a story it's either a good story that's being told well, um, or it's not. We watch foreign films, I think this whole thing about, well, there's a specific target audience. Yes, of course. I mean, if it's an animated children's film, yes. But I think in the genre that Bobby Jasoos finds itself, it's essentially an underdog story. It's the story about a woman who wants to earn her place under the sun. That's a very important thing for women in general. Yes, a little more specifically with what's going on in India of late. But, it's not an emotion that is alien to anyone. All over the world, people are trying to just, do something that makes them feel validated or proud of themselves or chase a dream. And this is a story of one such girl. So I'm not worried about will it cut through the London audience or the American audience, the Indian diaspora in Singapore or Malaysia or anywhere. It's a universal story. And I think at the core, that's what Bonfrey tries to do. It tries to tell universal stories, sometimes maybe a little more urban in the way the film is mounted, which is not even the case in Bobby Jasoos because it's through the by-lanes of Old City Hyderabad. So it's very rooted within a certain place in India.
Hmm.
But a good story will cut through. So I don't really think about that too much.
Okay. Now, keeping on good stories, is there any hint that you can give if you've got any other future productions coming up? Any hint you could give us?
Yeah, I promise that I'm dying to talk about what we're doing next. I've been writing that film for the last 2 years. I will be directing it with God's grace. And as soon as we cast it, but it's a very relevant subject socially, and it's being dealt with what I think is perhaps it's dealt with in a very entertaining fashion. So it's interesting because it's socially really relevant, and yet it's all just life and its canvas and how it looking to put it across. And I know that we will be talking about it soon, and I will spill all the beans on it then.
Brilliant. Well, I wish you well. If it is your directorial, I'm sure it will be it would be something that I need to watch, I think. Okay, my final question. Do you
Yeah.
have any final word on Bobby Jasoos for the audiences?
Yeah, look, if I had to really sum up Bobby Jasoos, which is releasing on the 4th of July, I would say that, I think it's been a while since you've had a film that the whole family can go and watch together. that is largely an uplifting story. It'll motivate and it'll touch you at different levels. And just go have a family outing on the 4th of July weekend, and all ages can sit together and watch the film. And Vidya has done a fabulous job leading the cast that we have from the front. She's ably backed by splendid performers like Supriya Pathak and Tanvi Azmi. We have a newish boy called Ali Fazal, who I think is going to break a lot of hearts pretty soon. Mm-hmm. And Shantanu Moitra and Swanand have done the music. Technically the film is sound, so you're bound to get your money's worth. And, I'm sounding like too much of a salesman now, but Bobby Jasoos is just like, it's a fun film, it's a nice film, it's a fun film, and you'll enjoy yourselves, Just to watch Vidya in like 10 different avatars should be worth it, I guess.
Oh, I'm sure it will be worth it, and it sounds completely paisa vasool, I've got to say. Thank you so much for talking to me, and I hope that we get to talk again about your future production.
Yes, hopefully really soon.
Hopefully really soon. I wish you well with that too. And I wish you well again with Bobby Jasoos releasing on the 4th of July. And this is Amrita signing off at BizAsia from talking to the wonderful Sahil Sangha. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.